Absolute Power, issue 4. Mark Waid writing with Dan Mora on the art. So, honestly, the biggest problem with talking about this, and we are keeping them separate, we're not mixing these two in, but reading all in right after it makes it almost made this one harder to remember afterwards because we moved on. We moved on to the new thing already, so it feels weird to go back and remember this.
And I would say only having an event like this being 4 issues, I think that's part of the problem, because I felt like there were parts of this that felt rushed. And like I had to try to think of, if you didn't read any of the tie-ins, you know, a lot of this stuff just seems to come from quite nowhere, but it just appears, you know?
Yeah, I was thinking about that as I was reading it as well. It's I don't know if rushed is the right word, but reliant on people reading the tie-in, because I think you kind of need to. I think this feels fine pacing wise if you read like Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman alongside it, and maybe Green Lantern, and probably I mean I never read Green Arrow. I assume Green Arrow teased what Ollie was going to do in this issue.
Yeah, I'm guessing too, because his return to the side of the Angels really feels like a lot of that stuff came in during Green Arrow, which of course I stopped reading.
Yes. Matt's showing some willpower for a trade. I feel like you were forced into it though, because all these new books get announced for the next few months. And you're like,
that's 100%.
Yeah, they trimmed down.
It was that and Flash, because we all know me. I'm stubborn. So I would have kept reading, you know, just to see where these were going.
Yeah. So I will say that, because this book starts and, like, you know, after Waller slapping Green Arrow, it goes to the heroes and it's like, yeah, we've got all our things assembled, but, you know, we've all accomplished their missions. You know, Damien and Wonder Woman have like freed all the heroes, and Damien makes a little joke about her friend, quote unquote, Steve Trevor. But I did sort of feel like, oh yeah, if you've not been reading any of those other books, this would all just feel like we've jumped ahead in the story. So that's a fair complaint if you haven't read those. It does make me wonder how they're going to collect this, because if you just read these 4 issues in a straight, you know, run, would it be satisfying or work? I don't know.
Yeah, feels like you're skipping a cutscene or something.
Yeah.
You know?
It's the sort of thing where it feels like if it had been like a 7-issue book instead of 4, a lot of those side quests would have been taken, maybe got a couple of issues in the main series in between, you know, maybe the last one and this one, or maybe sprinkled in between some of the other, I don't know. But regardless, this is how they did it. This is where we are. So, yeah, ultimately the heroes just make their big assault in Gamora Island. There's a lot of fighting. They've got a whole plan to try and take out the Amazos, which does work to an extent, but it's not permanent. The other big thing, though, is that in the basement, you've got Barry trying to hold back all these evil speedsters from alternate Earths coming through this like multiverse gate. You know, all that's going on. I think the big things for me in this, before we get to the ending stuff, is pretty much just the ideas of some of the speedsters going to help Hal like hold these speedsters back, you know, the evil speedsters, because he's running out of willpower basically. So like Jay and like Wally like jump in and say use ours and kind of fuel him with willpower. I kind of like that as a, you know,
I always love when the Flash and the Green Lanterns interact and they have each other's back because of that, you know, that long history between the two sets of characters, like going all the way back to, you know, Jay Garrick and Alan Scott, right? Like, so that's always cool to see.
Yeah, also just the vibrant reds and greens just go well together, just contrast each other nicely. The other big thing is that Batman's plan to give everyone their powers back, I did quite like, actually. It's because it's not time travel per se, it's just basically time traveling the Amazos themselves, so that everything that they do, because part of the reason why they're so indestructible right now and why they survive the attack they get early on in this issue is because they've got some of Time Commander's tech in them, and it basically kind of takes their innards back in time. So the idea is that they're going to manipulate that to go further back in time and sort of give all the powers back that they took from people. So, which
I thought that was a pretty clever way of one-upping the Amazos, right? Where they have these essentially hourglasses built in to where if they make a mistake, they get a respawn, right? And they get to redo things. So that's why the heroes are having such an issue. Where was this energy at? Or was it flowing through the Amazos, right? Like, I don't know. It seemed kind of a very, maybe we talk about this with Wade in World's Finest a lot. There's some Silver Agey, like not silliness, but logical stretches to make
Look, Wade's a very good writer, but he doesn't always feel the need to explain or have things completely work in a sort of more grounded sense.
And again, we'll talk about it when we get to the end, what happens with the power returning, but it makes sense for what he needs to do for the story next, right? Like, he doesn't need to over-explain where this energy was, because it's just a waypoint to get to the next part of the story, which again is fine, but it is a little bit of a nitpick.
Yeah. It ends up being Oliver. Like, his big hero moment is he's the one that shoots the the device that's going to trigger this all off with the Amazers. So he gets his big full-page spread, and Waller's pissed, and the heroes all basically just instantly win once they get their powers back. Like, they don't stand a chance. And then Waller looks like she's about to kill Nightwing out of frustration, and Dreamer is back to life and punches her. It turns out that because John kept dreaming about her, it kind of like made her remanifest from the dream world or whatever, which... Okay, fine, whatever. I'm not fussed.
Look, I'm not that familiar with Dreamer to know, right? I'm like, sure, she if Freddy Krueger can do it, why not Dreamer? Right?
Yeah.
Manifest in reality because someone was dreaming of you. Cool.
So the Oliver thing, just to go back to him for a second. So apparently it was always an infiltration thing, but because Amanda Waller had telepaths that would check to see if he was being genuine, basically he had Martian Manhunter, who knew about this still and didn't tell anyone else, basically took it from him so that he wouldn't know that he was a double agent, but then like the mental block was on like a timer, and it basically had the countdown hit 0, he remembered the plan and who, like, all his real feelings, and then that's when he sort of went against Waller sort of towards the end of it all. Batman's pissed that Jean didn't tell anyone about this plan, and he's just kind of like, hey, it's kind of ironic coming from you that you're complaining that people didn't reveal their secret plan. And Batman, and I kind of love this choice, just gives a Damien. I really like that. That's a nice touch. So that's all very nice. You got the willpower thing going on. Barry basically says we have to close this, door to the other universes, the multiverse door.
Yeah.
The only problem is, though, is that I think the way I'm going to have to do it is going to lock us out of the multiverse for good. Now, it's comics, so it's not actually for good, but at least for the time being, we're going to be cut off from the multiverse.
Right, which I think is okay, because we've had a lot of multiversal shenanigans the last couple of years.
And we're kind of getting into them as well again now, but I think what we're doing for the next while is like more of a there's just one other Earth, and that's the only one we're dealing with for foreseeable future.
Yeah, because the other ones exist, right? We're not going to have interactions with our heroes with them.
Yeah. Which is fine. So that's like a big outcome of this. Waller goes absolutely nuclear, talking about how they're still going to lose. She's still influenced the world to make them hate heroes. She's still done all this. She gets super pissed. She's mad that they've done all this and that they've somehow fought back. And then the secret plan here is that young character, Airwave, was recording and sending out everything she said about manipulating the world and faking all the hero stuff, doing bad stuff. And so everyone in the world sees it, and that kind of wraps that up in a neat bow where, no, you are going to be held accountable. What you've just done has been broadcast to everyone. Everyone knows. But there's some interesting stuff in the epilogue. Obviously, first thing first, just to go through it as I'm looking at it here, Barry seems to have lost his powers, right? Closing the multiverse door is taken, which is fine because we still have all the other speeds. Wally still get his, for example. He's the main Flash right now anyway. But yeah, it seems like Barry's going to be no speeding about for the foreseeable future.
No, he can definitely focus on his career and his fiancée, because they are engaged still, I'm guessing.
Yeah, as far as I know, yeah.
So him and Iris can do things, and he can still be kind of like Flash's version. I don't want to say Oracle exactly, but he's a pretty good leader. People listen to Barry, so he doesn't have no, position within the Flash family. But yeah, definitely a weird choice. Like, I feel like that's Wade sacrificing a Flash, but still being able to keep him around, right? Because it's kind of a crisis, and it's not a crisis without a Flash's thing. So
honestly, it could just be a thing where Spurrier, who's doing Flash, wants that outcome because it feeds into his story or something. So he just said, "Hey, Wade, can you depower Barry? Just give him a reason."
Can you depower Flash? Which one? You pick. Wade's not messing with Wally.
So Waller's in Belle Reve, and she's where everyone else is, and Dreamer's there to speak to her. And the two interesting tidbits that come out of this is that one, Waller's like, oh, I can come back from this. Like, you know how much information I've amassed, blah, 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 about all the heroes. And Dreamer says, go on, then tell me who Batman is. And then she just sort of stands there and she can't. And she's like, oh, tell me this, tell me that, tell me the real name of Cyborg, tell me the I don't know, like the parents of so-and-so. And she can't. Basically, like, Dreamer has manipulated her powers to take away all of the data, all the information, the intel, if you will, that Amanda Waller has amassed about superheroes over the years and taken it from her. She cannot access it, which is kind of like probably the cruelest punishment she could have done. Yeah. And this is actually one of the things here, when I got to this moment, I went, you know what? That tie-in miniseries sold this moment to me, because if I had not read that story of her starting that database when she sort of started collecting information about Batman, this moment wouldn't have landed as hard. But because they established her starting that in that mini, I thought this actually hit quite hard, that she doesn't have this information anymore.
And that's Waller's not her superpower exactly, but what makes her special is that she deals in information, and now she has all this information she can no longer access. So what value does she have?
Yep.
You know, so it really, like you said, it's kind of cruel, but she deserves it. So, you know, like, it took the one thing that set her apart from everybody, and it's turned it against her.
It's worth mentioning as well, Dreamer kind of admits that the other heroes don't know she's done this, because they probably wouldn't agree to do it. So Dreamer, and it makes some sense, because Dreamer was being controlled by Waller and under her thumb for a while there. And it feels like her getting to punish Waller and then doing this to her is kind of like the revenge, if you will, or the just desserts. The other tidbit here, though, is that Dreamer just kind of doesn't say it, but just implies as she leaves that there might be a bomb in the back of Waller's neck in case she escapes. And Waller yells out, "Did you put a bomb in my neck? Answer me." And she's like, you know, so is that satisfying as a DC fan to have Waller be scared that she's got a bomb in her neck? Honestly, it kind of is, because she's been doing this to people for years.
Well, you said it also goes in with the miniseries, right? Where that was her first form of control, was putting the bombs there. So now she's had
first successful form of control. That's the first thing she tried.
right. Her first successful. But this was actually made me like Dreamer more as a character. Not that I had problems with her, but she's just been kind of there. But to almost make her this kind of shadowy figure that can do this kind of things, it kind of, not that makes her a threat necessarily, but I like that there's potential for something in the future that's not just, hey, I show up in dreams and there's some weird things going on.
Well, she felt like a plot device, because it was always just she has predictions based on her dreams. This going through this with Waller and giving Waller this sort of revenge gives her a bit of character that maybe was lacking before. So, I'm definitely, I mean, I don't know if I'm going to necessarily hop onto a Dreamer book or whatever if it happens, but at the very least, like...
No! But if she shows up, it's not going to feel like a plot contrivance. It's not going to just be like, hey, she's here to make predictions. So... but here, and adding a little bit of a shadow operation type thing, like if she shows up working with the government or whatever, I like that for her.
Yeah. So we're at the old Justice League headquarters next, but obviously this gets to Oliver saying, hey, the reason why this even happened in the first place is because we'd all disbanded. We have to be a Justice League. We have to put the team back together. And of course, as soon as he makes that suggestion, Batman's basically like, bitch, we already had this conversation. We already decided we're having a Justice League. Although before we get to kind of where that goes, we should mention something that's brought up here, which is that not all of the powers that went back to the right people. So I don't know if we're going to do anything with that, but there is a panel, as he says that, where Black Canary has heat vision, which makes me think, who has the canary cry then?
Yes. Who has the canary cry? And then Plastic Man is phasing. Do things, right? The first panel early in the book that does this is when they first get all the powers returned, right? And you have Superman, and he's all, getting that Superman pump that he gets. Yeah. But it has fire and ice, and their powers had flopped, which I thought was really smart, because those two characters are intrinsically tied to each other. They're best friends. Powers are opposite. So to see ice with the fire, right? It lets you know that something was up. And then so when we get back here, it's like, oh no, this is a bigger problem. Yeah.
So it makes me think that maybe the first arc of Justice League Unlimited might be dealing with this. Like, oh, we have to go find like who's got what and swap them around. Maybe some innocent people, or maybe even some bad people ended up with some superpowers from heroes that, might do bad things with them. We have to deal with that. So it's interesting, if nothing else. So yeah, the ending is the tease for, hey, we've built a new watchtower. Go read the All In special. So yeah. So
also, Red Tornado looking like a Terminator. It says that Red Tornado has been broken beyond repair. And he's all strung up there with the exoskeleton, looking kind of creepy.
Yeah. Well, to be accurate, it does say maybe irreparable.
Yes.
So which means he probably will be eventually. But...
Yeah. But just the idea of him having that metal skeleton there again,
no,
very sinister.
This obviously Dan Mora's art was gorgeous throughout. All the fighting was great. Particularly, I really liked the flashing Green Lantern stuff with them holding back the evil speedsters. The Amazos fights was alright, but we've had Amazos fighting in this story since the start, so it wasn't as exciting. But all of the outcomes I do quite like. I like everything that it sets up for the future, and I did like the end of Waller's journey here. It does feel like, okay, we can't just have her going back to being the exact same thing again, not right away anyway. And I do think her consequences here are interesting. And, at what point is someone going to come and break her out because they want her for something? And who is that? What sort of villain does that? Or do the heroes need her because she has intel on something that they actually need to save the day? I mean, there's so many possibilities where they could go with that, assuming they don't just sort of forget about it and then eventually, quickly retcon it because they want to use her again the normal way. But that's always the risk with comics. But I can't fault this book for that. That's good. But yeah, I mean, if nothing else, it was like, okay, it's teasing the new Justice League. It made me want to read All In. So, I think if I have to critique, other than what we said at the start, which was it does feel like it relied on some of the ongoing books that were tying in to kind of fill in big chunks of the story, right? And it feels like you may be lacking something if you just skipped them and went straight to, this final issue. The other thing I would say is that I enjoyed this final issue. There's a lot of great stuff in the ending, but I don't think this book ever topped its first issue because the premise was so good. The surprise attack and the heroes was so well done and well told. I don't think the actual dealing with the problem afterwards was ever quite as exciting as the initial setup of the problem in the first place. So it's still a good event. Like, I still enjoyed it. It's still it's a nice use of all the characters. It's a nice use of like setting up for the next big thing in phase. But
and and sometimes when you get to these events, sometimes it feels like there's one character that's made kind of our focal point. And here it felt like Wade was really juggling a bunch of these characters, and he did it pretty well. It never felt like, it really felt like an ensemble story, which is a pretty good skill in an event like this. Yeah,
but what I was saying though is I don't think I would recommend this as a standalone book to anyone. Like, this isn't like an Infinite Crisis where you can say this is a great 7-issue story. It's a big event. It'll feel quite, epic when you read it from start to finish. It'll make, well, maybe Infinite Crisis is a bad one to start with because it's so deep into DC lore. But you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like something that,
like this is not Blackest Night, right? Where you could kind of just hand that trade, even though it has tie-ins to Green Lantern, right? It just felt like the next chapter.
Yeah,
you could just hand that and you're fine.
Yeah, this is a little bit too reliant on the books that was tying into it and the fact that it's leading into like what's coming next. Not that you can't have a tease of what's coming next, even in a pretty good standalone book, but it's a bit too away from that to say that. But it still is an ongoing comic book. But as I'm reading everything, I had a fun time and I like what it's setting up. So
also the Mora art, right? We always talk about how vibrant and everything is, and all the colors pop and all the layouts are good. But when we get to that Dreamer and Waller stuff, everything is bathed in shadows. Yeah, and it just really adds that whole last scene. Actually, the way that he plays with the space.
There's a moment where it's like it's looking down at Waller and she's got like a spotlight around her. It's very reminiscent of Zod in the first Superman movie when they're on Krypton getting their sentence.
I didn't think about that till just now. But that's why it seems familiar, right? But just how everything's bathed in the shadows and all of that. It just Mora keeps just finding ways to make it better. So
I think we're going to have some more interesting things to say about the All In special. So I think we'll just wrap up this one here. Matt, what are you giving?
I'll say it didn't go out with a bang, but it wasn't also a thud. So I'll give this a art was really good though. I'll give it a 7.5.
That's exactly what I was thinking. 7.5.
Shoot.
I think it's good. But I just don't think I can quite call it great for the reasons discussed.
Yeah, I was like, do I want to give it the straight 8 or not? But yeah.